Good afternoon and welcome to our Work Development Permit webinar. I'm Ainsley Jones from Shelter WA, and here with us today we have Tanielle Martin from Legal Aid WA. Thank you for joining us, Tanielle. All right, so firstly, before I get started today, I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm meeting on today, which is the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to run over a few little housekeeping rules. So this is a webinar, so to all our participants, we cannot see or hear you. And we have also disabled the chat function today. So if you would like to submit any questions to Tanielle or myself, please use the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen, and it's the second icon in from your left. And we'll answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. Finally, this webinar is actually being recorded, and we will be making it available on our website by the end of the week. So that is all from me. So I'm actually going to pass over to Tanielle now, and she's going to tell us all about this exciting new program. Over to you, Tanielle.
Thanks, Ainsley. So my name is Tanielle. I work at Legal Aid in our new Work and Development Permit Service. And my role there is I'm the paralegal. So I assist clients with fines issues at court, as well as through our info line service. So I give them legal advice about what they can do with their fines. And so a specific subset of that service is that we are also delivering, rolling out this new Work and Development Permit scheme to help people work off their fines through participating in certain activities rather than paying them off, which is the usual way that people would obviously deal with their fines. So I'll just share my screen. Show you the PowerPoint. So, as I said before, from the Work and Development Permit Service, and before I get stuck in, I'll just like to acknowledge as well the Aboriginal owners and custodians of the land on which I live, work and meet, which Legal Aid has its offices on. And we recognise the spiritual relationship that Aboriginal people have with country, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So there were a few reforms to the Fines, Penalties and Infringement Notices Enforcement Act of 1994, one being obviously this new Work and Development Permit scheme, but other reforms include making imprisonment a last resort option for non-payment of fines. And that was really catalysed by the death of an Indigenous woman in prison tragically in 2014. And it was made a priority. It was actually a recommendation of the coroner at that time that imprisonment should now not be an option for non-payment of fines, that there needs to be another way for people to deal with those fines. So other reforms include the removal of licence suspension orders for people who live in remote areas. So if their last known address that's recorded by the Department of Transport is in a remote area, then basically the effect of that was that their licence suspension orders were revoked when these reforms came into play on the 30th of September this year, which was only a few weeks ago, so very recent. Another very important reform that came through as well is that there's a new principle of hardship enshrined within that legislation, which is required to be considered when thinking about the enforcement of fines, which means essentially that the Fines Enforcement Registry need to consider what people's circumstances are and whether they're actually able to pay their fines and what sort of enforcement measures are appropriate given the circumstances that people are in. Other reforms that have also come into play, one which is a bit more on the negative side, is that people's wages can now be garnished. So, and that's for people who actually do have the means to pay their fines, but simply choose not to. They may be subjected to a garnishee order, which is given by the sheriff. and then like their money will be taken out of their bank account directly. A positive reform as well is that the fines expiation orders will now allow people to actually reduce or even clear their fines debt while they're in custody. So that's just a simple application that people can make to have their fines cleared while they're in custody or shortly after they leave custody. Obviously as well, as I was saying, because of that principle of hardship, the Fines Enforcement Registry is now required to take into account the means of an offender to pay their fines when considering what enforcement measures to take. So the new work and development permits are an option for people who have outstanding court fines that are facing hardship. They allow an eligible person to work off their fines debt simply by participating in certain activities or treatment under a sponsor in the community. And a sponsor is any sort of accredited organisation or health practitioner who's applied for sponsorship under the Work and Development Permit Scheme and has been approved by the CEO of the Fines Enforcement Registry to act as a sponsor of the Work and Development Permit Scheme. And essentially what their role is to just supervise a person who's got a Work and Development Permit and report back through a secure portal about what that person is doing to clear their fines. So that permit that that person would have would just specify the activities and the treatment that are to be completed by the person in order to reduce or clear their fine debt. And if an eligible person is already engaged with an organisation or health practitioner that's not yet a Work and Development Permit sponsor, there's quite a simple process to follow. If that organisation or person wants to sign up, there's just an application form which is quite short to fill out and to submit. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's available on the Department of Justice website. And all of those details are further along in these slides, and I'll also email those details out to whoever would like those details. Just included this slide just to really put into perspective how large of a problem unpaid fines can really be for people. As criminal lawyers or people from a criminal law background, we sort of think when our clients get a fine of, it's quite a positive outcome, they've avoided imprisonment or more serious sanctions, but the reality is that the impact of unpaid fines can actually be quite detrimental if they're not paid or they're not dealt with in some way. It basically means that people might be subjected to license suspension and orders, which means that they can't drive, they can't get to work, they can't attend their medical or Centrelink appointments, they can't attend to their personal obligations. The simple fact is people need to drive, they're going to drive, and regardless of whether they're supposed to be or not, and this just causes a cycle of secondary offending. So, the reality also is that vulnerable people are more likely to default on their fines as well, because their life circumstances, they have a range of other debts. Maybe they don't really understand what the impact of not paying their fines would be. Any mail that they get about their fines might go to their old address because they might not have updated their address, or they might have unstable accommodation, so they're moving from place to place, and that's why they're not updating their address. They might not have employment, so they lack the means to pay in full, and they might feel a sense of they might be avoiding dealing with their fines because they might have other issues that are impacting on them, like mental illness or drug or alcohol issues, homelessness, things like that. So I've included this slide as well just to show, just in the last year, just a snapshot of the amount of people that were sort of impacted by unpaid fines. There are over 30,000 people in the state with enforcement warrants for non-payment of fines and infringements. An enforcement warrant essentially allows the Sheriff of WA to do certain things against a person with unpaid fines. They can do things like wheel clamping, garnishing their wages, seizing and selling their personal property, or lodging caveats on their real property, so whatever land or properties they have. And 16,764 under driver's license suspension, unpaid court fines. That's also a huge problem because people, as I was saying before, can't attend to their personal obligations, and then they might become caught up in that cycle of secondary offending because they're driving anyway because they need to drive to get around. And one really good thing is that driver's license suspensions won't be operative in remote areas anymore. So anywhere essentially that's outside of Perth, that's classified as remote for the purposes of this amendment. So that means that people outside of Perth can't get license suspensions anymore for unpaid court fines, which is a really positive thing. Those work and development orders that I mentioned there, scheduled or completing, those are a little bit different to the work and development permits. Essentially, a work and development order is something that is an order of the court, so a person is required to report to a community corrections facility within 7 days of that order being made to complete work and development activities. So it's different to these new work and development permits in the sense that this new scheme, the new permits, it's actually a voluntary scheme. So a person can voluntarily undertake activities under that permit, and if they simply stop attending, then there's no direct adverse consequences from that. They won't be subjected to any sort of imprisonment, anything like that. It's just simply that they'll stop reducing their fines and they'll need to find another way to deal with them. So, and that other figure as well, 47,000 on approved time to pay arrangements. That's the more common way that people deal with their fines, because sometimes their fines can be quite large. So they'll often go on a time to pay arrangement instead of paying them in full. And so that number is reflective of that trend, is that 47,000 state now on approved time to pay. So as I was saying before, you need to be eligible in order to obtain a work and development permit, and eligibility is basically assessed on the grounds of hardship. And it's basically anyone who has a court fine debt that is experiencing some form of hardship that they're able to prove that they're experiencing. So this could be a range of things, but it's not just purely the things that are listed there. It can be wider than that, as long as they're able to provide proof, as I said, of that hardship that they're facing. But these are just some examples. So financial hardship, exposure to family violence, mental illness that's been diagnosed, some form of disability, experiencing homelessness, or experiencing alcohol and other drug use problems. And these are the types of activities and treatments that an eligible person can undertake as part of a work and development permit. So 5 categories listed there, obviously quite broad as well. So unpaid work, for on behalf of an approved sponsor, medical or mental health treatment under an approved treatment plan. So for example, anyone who's facing some form of mental illness, like anxiety, depression, and even things that are more serious than that, they can simply go and see their GP. They can get a mental health treatment plan, and then they can start seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist to address that problem, and those sessions would be activities that they can use to reduce their fines debt if that psychologist or psychiatrist signs up as the sponsor, of course. Approved educational, vocational and personal development courses. That's quite broad. It encompasses a wide range of different types of counselling. So it could be financial counselling, it could be just general life coaching, any sort of programs that a person is doing to help them with a specific skill or behavioural issue. It's quite broad. Treatment for alcohol or drug use problem under a treatment plan. So that could be like rehab activities that they're undergoing at a facility, or it could be pharmacotherapy, detox programs, things like that. And then for people that are under 25, mentoring programs. So any sort of person that they've got in their life who's helping them with, I guess, certain skills, or to, you know, build certain skills in certain areas, that could be something that they could do to reduce their fines. And these are the rates of the activities that people can do. So basically $70 per hour or part thereof for all of the categories except for unpaid work. So breaks are obviously not to be counted, but any sort of activities that a person might undergo or do, which aren't directly supervised, may be able to be counted as long as they can provide some proof of that. It'll be up to the sponsors to provide evidence of that. And this is all calculated and deducted by the Fines Enforcement Registry based on the hours that a sponsor reports back on it that a person has done through the portal that I was talking about. So there's a secure portal that the Department of Justice have set up. You simply log in and you put details of what your client is doing and the hours that they're completing. There's no set length of time that a client must undertake a work and development permit. The amount of time a client can undertake a work and development permit will depend on the amount of money they earn in respect to that fine, the type of work and development permit activity they're undertaking, obviously these rates that are prescribed, and whatever personal circumstances and capacity they might have to undertake those work and development permit activities on a continuing basis. Before I go any further, it's also worth making the distinction between a fine and an infringement notice. It's quite a common question that we get. A fine is imposed by court, whereas an infringement notice is imposed by some sort of prosecuting authority. So the common ones can be councils, the WA Police, the Public Transport Authority. Those sorts of authorities will impose infringement notices. And unfortunately at this stage, only unpaid court fines can be worked off under a work and development permit, and unpaid infringements cannot be worked off. However, throughout service, we are assisting people to reduce their unpaid infringements debts. We're offering a service to help clients negotiate with the Fines Enforcement Registry and Bay Corp about whatever infringements they might have if they're finding that they're struggling to meet those payments. Then that is something that we're able to do for clients through our service as well. And a person is eligible to apply for a work and development permit after 28 days have passed since the fine was imposed, and the notice of intention to enforce has been issued by the Fines Enforcement Registry. But essentially, if you're not sure whether a person is eligible to apply yet, we're here on legal aid to help you find out, or you can simply call the Fines Enforcement Registry to find out that information with that client present. And their phone number is at the end of these slides. You'll be able to just simply call that number and find out, or we can find out for you. And you're able to apply on behalf of the client regardless of whether they've got a time to pay arrangement in place. Because as I was saying before, it's not just financial hardship, it's any form of hardship that a person is able to demonstrate. So even if they do have the ability to pay the fine, if they're experiencing some form of hardship that they can demonstrate, then they can still apply for a work and development permit as long as they can find a sponsor. So these are the people that are not eligible for a work and development permit. As I was saying, people who only have unpaid infringements, and people who are not experiencing hardship. So I've included this slide just to sort of put into perspective why this is something that your organisation or you as an individual could consider doing this. It's just an extra benefit it's an extra way that you can help your current clients through the services that you're potentially already providing to them. If those services fall within those categories I mentioned before, of approved activities, then essentially just by continuing to do those activities with that client, they'll be able to reduce their fines debt. But you'll need to obviously apply for the sponsorship process, which, as I said before, it's quite an easy application. And then once you've been approved, just reporting back once a month about what activities that client, you've been supervising with that client that's got the work and development permit. It's just an additional incentive as well to help people stay engaged with your services. It helps improve long-term outcomes for the client. Because of the fact that they're staying engaged with the service, you're able to address those issues over a longer period of time, perhaps because they've had more of an incentive to stay engaged and to stay engaged over a longer period of time. And it's just also a worthwhile community service project, a new way to help people in the community who are experiencing hardship. So our work and development permit scheme is actually modelled on the very successful New South Wales WDO scheme, it's called there. So they actually there was actually an evaluation of that scheme in 2015, which outlined some really key amazing outcomes that clients had as a result of participating. So 95% of those clients actually said that it had reduced their levels of stress and anxiety about their fines debt, which is an amazing outcome in and of itself, just to be able to help people reduce those levels of stress. But it also encourages engagement with services, as I was saying before. So by encouraging those engagement with services, they're able to address issues impacting their ability to take control of their fines debt. It provides incentives to commit to treatment for certain issues that they might have. It provides a catalyst for a more positive phase of their lives. It helps them to facilitate recovery of their driver's license, which then enables them to meet family and personal commitments and be able to find stable employment. It helps them to overcome social isolation because they're now engaging with services and people in their community. And it also just provides a social safety network for them. So they have a network of people that they can rely on, they can ask for help because they're engaged with services. This is a sponsor story from New South Wales. This organisation, they're a social justice organisation that provides homelessness and housing support, but also youth and family services, case management, support for people with disability. They do a wide range of things. And they said that the WDO program, which is basically the same program that we've got here in WA, it's been a really effective way to encourage people to engage with their services. And the reason that they had decided to do it was because they wanted to be able to help their clients in a new way, given that, you know, fines can become a poverty trap for people struggling to make ends meet. And that it was a powerful tool to empower people to do something productive for themselves while ridding themselves of debt. So it's really, they're getting an extra benefit from engaging with the services they were already engaging with, and an extra incentive to stay engaged as well. And quite impressive as well, the amount of people they've been able to help through the work and development order scheme there, which has been $32,000 worth of fines debt that they've been able to clear for those clients. And they've just really incorporated those questions about people's fines into their intake process. So that's something that they ask people. Some people might not know, but you know, it's worth asking anyway, because that's something that we can assist with at Legal Aid. We can help you find that information, or it's a simple phone call to the Fines Enforcement Registry to find that information. Obviously, as I was saying before, to help your clients with fines, it's worth telling everyone that you know, all your networks, about the work and development permits. We're trying to spread the word as far and wide as possible, so we can help as many clients as we can, and also recruit sponsors in the community who would be able to help clients with this issue. We will shortly have some information that can be displayed in your offices in public areas. That's being organised by the Department of Justice, and we'll be disseminating those posters and flyers and publications when we have them. Obviously, sign up as a sponsor of the Work and Development Permit Scheme. We're very keen to have as many sponsors as we can on board from as diverse backgrounds as we can, so that we can help as many people as we can facing different issues, different life issues. Sponsoring those with unpaid fines by supervising activities on a work and development permit. And if you would like to, or you've got clients with legal issues other than their fines, we're also accepting referrals to our WDP service for their fines related issues or other sections of legal aid for other issues that they might have. So we practice in the civil area, family law, as well as crime. So a very big practice that we run, and we can help with quite a diverse array of issues. There's also the Aboriginal Legal Service that's offering the same work and development permit service, but for Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander clients. So that's a referral that can also be made to them. So basically, the admin work that's involved is reporting once a month through an easy-to-use eCourts portal, just briefly outlining the activities you've done with the client, and how many hours you spent doing those activities. And if you have any issues with using the portal, we're here at Legal Aid to support you with troubleshooting, with matching up clients, with accepting referrals, or any questions that you have about sponsorship or about WDPs. We're here to help. And also the Fines Enforcement Registry have a helpline which you can call for assistance. So to get involved, you can sign up as a sponsor by going to the Department of Justice eCourts website. That's the link over there. You can sign up to be a sponsor of the Work and Development Permit Scheme, or you would log in if you're already a sponsor. You would then complete an application for a Work and Development Permit on behalf of your client. If you've got any clients that are wanting to have a Work and Development Permit, and then essentially you would just work out a treatment plan or activity plan with that client, and you would provide those services to them. And once a month, you would just report back through that portal, and you'd also need to keep whatever records. You need to keep records of whatever activities you're doing with that client through that portal. So, and then once that person completes their work and development permit activities, you would just basically submit those hours and let. I think it's an automatic process that it just their fines debt is eradicated for that particular fine. And while they're doing a work and development permit, if they rack up any other fines, you can actually add them to the work and development permit that they already have. And it's quite a simple process to do that through that same portal. So as I was saying just then, this is just the application process outlined again. Just identifying whether they have court fines or infringements. If they've got court fines, they're eligible if they're in hardship. So those are the categories of hardship listed there again, and you would need to obtain proof of that hardship that you need to submit in order to get the permit. And then you would just decide an activity or treatment plan in the categories listed. It could be a mixture of those different categories, or just be one category. And once that's all submitted, you would get the work and development permit approved, and you'll be able to start supervising the client on that permit. And if you have any bumps in the road, as I said before, we're here to help. Our work and development permit service number is there, 92616353, or you can email us at wdpservice@legalaid.wa.gov.au. There's also a very useful document, the Work and Development Permit Scheme Guidelines. So if you have any specific questions, those should be addressed in those guidelines, or you can simply reach out to us and we can help you find the answer. There'll also be, in due course, a record keeping checklist for Work and Development Permit sponsors, as well as an eligibility checklist for potential Work and Development Permit clients. That'll just help you keep track of the records that you need to keep, and keep track of what the eligibility requirements are to participate in a work and development permit. So that brings me to the end of the slides. I am happy to take any questions that anybody might have, if there are any. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Tanielle. An excellent presentation. You're so well spoken. So as Tanielle said, we're happy to take any questions. So we do have the Q&A function. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to post some Q&A questions if you have any. I do have some pre-submitted questions, so I'll start with those. So Tanielle, we have had a question from a housing provider, and they want to know that if they had a tenant that expressed that they were struggling and that the reason to make rent or other payments, and this is because of fines debts, what should the steps be that they take, and how can they also teach their employees to deal with such situations?
Okay, so if they've got a client that is experiencing those problems, they can simply refer that client to us with that client's consent, and we would speak to that client over the phone. We could give them legal advice about what they can do about their fines, or as well as their infringements if they've got any. And I guess as well, the other main thing that we'd really like organisations to do is just let people know that this is an option, that new permits are an option for people to deal with their court fines, and to reach out to either ALS or legal aid in order to get some information about that. We also have some fact sheets about the scheme, so those are available to be given to clients. And so they can read that in their own time and decide whether it's something they'd like to pursue. And if so, then they can simply call us at Legal Aid and help them get matched up with a service that's a sponsor, or they've got some sort of service they're already linked in with. We would then approach that service and see if they'd like to sponsor that person.
Beautiful. And those fact sheets that you mentioned, are they available on Legal Aid WA's website?
No, not yet. They're not available yet because the reforms only came through very, very recently. But I'm happy to send those to you, Ainsley, or to whoever is willing to give me their email address. I can then also attach the work and development permit guidelines, as well as the website link where you can find out all of the information that you need about the scheme and how to get involved.
Beautiful. So we'll make those available to all the participants today and anyone who emails and asks for them as well. If anyone does want to email and ask for those, you can reach me on research@shelterwa.org.au or just email the generic shelter email address. I've got a few more questions here. So I had one person message through saying, what do organisations need to become sponsors? Is there any specific documentation that they need to provide and things like that?
So essentially, the sponsorship application requires you to submit your insurance documents, and basically to just write down what activities you'll actually be providing that fall within the approved activities categories. And then other than that, it's just basically contact details so people can contact you, and that information will be available on the website so that people can just go to that register and call that point of contact to inquire about doing the work and development permit through that organisation.
Perfect. And then last but not least, I had someone also message through asking, can they become a sponsor for a specific demographic, for example, if they are only interested in doing youth mentoring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's perfectly fine. If you have a specific client as well that you'd like to help, there's also an option to just sponsor that one client, just do like a pilot sort of with that one client and just let us know, or let the Fines Enforcement Registry know so that they can indicate that on their public register. Yeah, essentially you can basically let us know at Legal Aid what your criteria are for clients that you'd accept, and then that way we won't refer any to you that fall outside that category. And that can also be indicated on the register so that people won't call you, or they hopefully won't call you unless they meet those criteria.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tanielle, for today. I think that is all the questions that we've had come through. If anyone does have any post questions to the webinar, feel free to email to myself, and I'm sure I can get in contact with Tanielle and we can come back with some answers for you. We will be making this webinar available on our website at the end of the week. And yeah, we just really would like to thank you, Tanielle, for your time today and for an excellent webinar and presenting such wonderful information. And we can't wait to see this program really hit the ground running.
Cool. Thanks, Ansley, and happy to be here. And thanks, everyone, for coming.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.